Hey guys, our topic for today is all about ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Perspective of ethnocentrism addresses foreign people from the standpoint of superiority of the observer's culture, include values, religion, and symbols. So, while cultural relativism addresses other people in the light of those culture. So, furthermore, we'll proceed to ethnocentrism. Before going to the topic, I'll hand you a quote by Audre Lorde. It is not differences that divides us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So you should remember that. Ethnocent- Ethnocentrism is judging another culture solely by values and standards of one's own culture. And so, in this perspective, the people judge the culture of other people that their culture is superior to other culture. And so, ethnocentric individuals judge other groups relative to their own ethnic group or culture, especially with the concern of the language, behavior, and customs and religion. So, cultural identity is defined as its identity of belonging to a group. It's part of person's self-conception and self-perception are related to nationality, ethnicity, religion, social class, generation, locality, and other kinds of social group and its own distinct culture. According to William G. Sumner, ethnocentrism is defined as the technical name of the view of things in which one's group is the center of everything and others are scaled and rated to reference to it. He further characterized as often leading pride, vanity, beliefs of one's own group's superiority, and contempt of outsiders. So in the study of anthropology, it defines people born into a particular culture that grow up observing the values and behaviors of the culture will develop to a worldwide that considers their culture to be the norm or the superior standard culture. Hence, if the people then experience other cultures that have different values and normal behaviors, they will find that they thought patterns appropriate to their birth culture are not appropriate for the new cultures they've experienced. However, since people are accustomed to their birth culture, it can be difficult for them to see the behaviors of other people in the different culture because they grown up to on what culture they are on what culture or ethnic group they belong to. People of different culture from the different viewpoint of that culture rather than from their own. So let's go to some examples of ethnocentrism. It includes religious-centric constructs claiming that divine association is like the divine nation, one nation under God, God's own country, God's chosen people, and the God's promised land. So the next one will be the cultural relativism. Is the principle that an individual person's belief and activity should be understood by others in terms of individuals' own culture. So cultural relativism, it was established as accepted in the anthropological research by Franz Boas. So Franz Boas was a German-born American anthropologist and a pioneer of the modern anthropology, who has been called the father of American anthropology. His work was associated with a movement known as the cultural relativism. Relativism was in a part of response to Western ethnocentrism, which take obvious forms in which one consciously believes that one's people's art are most beautiful, values, and most virtuous beliefs of the most truthful. So in 1887, Franz Boas articulated the idea that civilization is not something absolute but is relative, and our ideas and concepts are true only so far as the village civilization goes. However, Boas did not coin the term. He originally trained in physics and geography and argued one's culture may mediate and thus limits one's perception in less obvious ways. He understood that culture to include not only certain tastes in food, art, music, or beliefs about religion. He assumed a much broader notion of culture, and he defined culture as the totality of the mental and physical reaction and activities that characterize the behavior of the individuals composing a social group, collectively and individually in relation to their natural environment, to their groups, to the members of the group itself, and to each individual himself. This understanding confronts anthropologists with two problems. First, how to escape the unconscious bonds of one's own culture, which inevitably bias our perceptions of and reactions to the world. And second, how to make sense of an unfamiliar culture. So, in the generalization of this topic, ethnocentrism is the tendency to assume that one's own culture and way of life represent the norm or are superior to all others. But if we have to understand the other culture of the other ethnic groups, we can't say that our culture is the superior of all. And also, in the generalization of the cultural relativism is the viewing of people's behavior from the perspective of their own culture. So is we should have the ability to understand a culture on its own terms and not to make judgment using the standards of one's own culture. The goal of this is to promote understanding of the cultural practices that are not typically parts of one's own or our culture. So that's all for the topic, and thank you. See you to the next vlog.